Audre Lorde said that in our work and in our living, we must recognize that difference is a reason for celebration and growth rather than a reason for destruction. For me, every time I read this quote, the first thing that comes to mind is my first lesson about the destruction of differences. This kind of takes me back. It transports me back to my own childhood in Miami, Florida, where I currently reside, but back to a time when my family and I had just migrated from Jamaica to Miami, Florida. I was 9 years old. And so naturally, I carried with me all of my Jamaican customs. And one of those customs was standing up to speak as a sign of respect to my teachers. So this simple act of standing up to speak was, it was out of showing reverence because that's what I was taught to do. And that's what we did in my culture. But this act in my culture was different, and it became a source of ridicule and ostracism. The difference between my Jamaican culture and the American culture of my peers was a difference that caused, for me, it caused instruction. It caused the destruction of my self-confidence and also my sense of belonging in school. I remember this day when I was sitting in my brand new American classroom. I felt like I was a stranger here in America. So I still cling to a lot of the traditions that I held from my Jamaican roots. And every time my teacher called on me, I stood, and I did so effortlessly, and I did so with pride. But each time that I pushed my chair back and then I got up out of my seat, I was met with whispers from my classmates, cruel whispers at that. I was a little bit confused because I had never had that reaction before, and I really couldn't fathom what I had done to evoke such a response from my classmates. But because I was still clinging to my roots, I continued to stand. And each time I did, the cruel whispers transformed into a barrage of laughter and ridicule from my classmates. And every single time this happened, I felt more and more humiliated. And my confidence was shaken, and so was my desire to speak. My desire to speak went away. I no longer wanted my voice to be heard, to not draw attention to myself, and to avoid the pain of being laughed at and ridiculed. So I silenced my voice, and I made myself so small that I felt like I disappeared in the background. But then one day, there was my Spanish teacher. Her name was Miss Fernandez. And Miss Fernandez was a petite woman, as you could see on the picture, okay? She wore the highest of heels, but even in her small stature, she had a towering presence. And Miss Fernandez, for me, was the beacon of hope that I needed. She came to my rescue, and she saw me and believed in me and lifted me up in a time when I wanted to vanish. So Miss Fernandez knew and recognized that I had a lot to contribute, and she understood my value. And she acknowledged my worth and really became that ray of sunshine that I needed amongst the negativity and the rejection that I was facing. To me, Miss Fernandez, she saved me, right? She took time to speak to me, to hear me, to uplift me, to explain to me that I was honoring my culture by standing to speak. But in America, there were different customs and different norms. And she didn't just stop there. She stood up for me in front of the class as well, setting the tone for my classmates to respect and to celebrate all of our differences. She let the class know that it was not okay to make fun of differences, and that we all had things about us, about that related to, where we came from and our families, that made us unique and also made us shine. And so Ms. Fernandez, to me, her unwavering support and her belief was the push that I needed to gain the confidence to continue to stand and to speak. So having shared that part of my story with you, I want to pause here for just a moment and take you back to the quote that I started with. And here's the quote on the screen. The quote again says that in our work and in our living, we must recognize that difference is a reason for celebration and growth rather than a reason for destruction, by Audre Lorde. So my question to you is, have you ever experienced a time in your work or in your lives where your differences were not celebrated, but instead your differences led to destruction?